Okay, hello and welcome to the October 27th, 2021 meeting of the Oak Grove Community Council. My name is Joseph Edge and I am the chair, and our program for tonight includes kind of our regular business and then an election for our vacant secretary position. We've got the Oak Lodge Governance Project presenting their phase one study, and then Luard and some committee updates. Now, in the meantime, can I ask everyone to keep your microphones muted unless you have the floor? And we'll get going here. And could I enlist the help of my co-hosts to make sure that the mute buttons are taken care of? Thank you. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to ask our board members to introduce themselves. As I said, I'm Joseph Edge. I'm the chair. I live in the River Forest neighborhood. Valerie, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Valerie Chapman. I'm the vice chair and I live on Evergreen Street, just a block from the trolley trail.
Jane, could you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you. My name is Jane Civiletti, the treasurer, and I live on Fair Oaks Avenue. Richard.
I'm Richard Niepman, and I live on McCartney Lane, which is 3 blocks south of the Fred Meyers.
All right, thanks, team. Our other board member is out on vacation, Mark, and then our acting secretary is not feeling well tonight. So with that, I will take us ahead into what I'd like to do is introductions to help with attendance. So I will read down the list, and as you hear your name, please unmute your microphone and then let us know your first and last name and the neighborhood that, or the name of the street that you live on, please. We'll start with Tori Simons.
My name's Tori Simons. I live on Whipple Avenue.
All right, thanks, Tori. Baldwin.
My name is Baldwin John William Vanderbile, and I live on Neff Road, very close to Stringfield Family Park.
Thanks, Baldwin. Anissa and Edred.
Yeah, we live on Fair Oaks Avenue. What else are we supposed to say? I forgot.
Oh, yeah, we know who you are. We just want to make sure we're getting attendance right. Brianna.
That's me.
Yes.
My name is Brianna, and I am on Rupert Drive.
Thanks, Brianna. Dave Doback. Dave.
Oh, hi, Dave Doback, I live in Rose Villa.
Thanks, Dave. Eleanor.
Eleanor is on a phone call, Joseph.
Oh, okay, I see that now. Thank you. Gwen. We'll come back to Eleanor.
Volume, Gwen. Can't hear you.
Green's on mute, doesn't, apparently doesn't.
There we go.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my name is Gwen. I live on Evergreen Street. I can still remember some of that with Valerie.
Thanks, Gwen. Jenna.
Jenna Smith on Fair Oaks Drive.
Thank you. Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda Seals, and I live on Woodland Way with my sister Carolyn Shaneman.
Thank you. Mark Knudsen.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Knudsen. I live on Cottonwood Court, just off of Hill Road near View Acres. And I'm also serve on the board of Oak Lodge Water Services District.
Thanks, Mark. Mitra.
Hi, I'm Mitra Anusharavani, and I live on Ruby Drive.
Nathan.
Hello, Nathan Breitenfeld, and I live on Schroeder.
Thank you. Paul.
Paul Savas, local resident, Kronberg Avenue.
And Suzanne.
Sure. Good evening. I'm Suzanne Wolf, and I live on Southeast East Avenue.
Thank you. And Tom.
Tom Civiletti, Fair Oaks Avenue at Oak Grove Boulevard.
And Wayne.
Hi, my name's Wayne Potter. I live at River Ridge Drive, which is located at Walnut View Retirement Community.
Thanks, Wayne. And let's see, we have one more attendee. Let's see. Oh, Eleanor. Eleanor, can you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Eleanor Hunter and I live on Laurie Avenue.
Thanks, Eleanor. And then we're being joined right now by Jacob. Jacob, could you unmute yourself and say your name and the name of the street you live on, please?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jacob. I live on Rupert Drive.
Thank you. And with that, we, I think, have everybody checked in. So let's see. So the next thing up is officer reports, and I'd like to. We don't have our acting secretary here tonight, so I'll just turn it over to Jane for the treasurer's update.
Thank you, Joseph. The treasury report is we have actually had one payment this month, the last month, and that was a reimbursement for the hosting of our website. Joseph was reimbursed to the amount of $142.20. And that brings our total to $1,526.18. Thank you.
And I'm going to keep Jane here because we're actually going to hold an election for our vacant secretary position. The Oak Grove Community Council Board of Directors met earlier this month, and we nominated unanimously Danielle Lohman, who's been acting secretary. And so I'd like to turn it over to Jane, who will be conducting the election today.
Thank you, Joseph. The election will be my call for any other nominations. It's an open call now. If there's anyone here, the nominee must be present and accept the nomination for secretary position. So I will wait to see any hands raised or unmuted if anyone is nominating someone else or themselves for the secretarial position. Hearing none, I would like to call for an election. We would nominate Danielle Lohman, our acting secretary, to become a member of the board as the secretary. You may all vote yes or no, and you would send your vote to me in the chat box. And these are only votes by voting members. I think you know who you are. Few people here are not voting members, so only voting members can elect the secretary. And if you would send your responses to me in the chat box, I will tally them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. And so we'll put those together and tally them later and announce the results before we leave tonight. So with that, we are on to our feature presentation tonight, the Oak Lodge Governance Project. And I'd like to introduce Mitra and Nathan and Tom and Eleanor to give the presentation. Did I miss anybody? No, I think we got it all. Okay, so with that, Mitra, I think Valerie's going to make you a co-host and you can share your screen.
Let's see. Thank you, everybody. Let's see. Hold on. Hold on just a hot minute. Forgive me, team. I just got a new computer and it's not, let's see.
So while Mitra's getting that up, we could talk about if you have questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat. and direct those to Joseph because he'll be moderating and doing that. So sometimes there's a number of questions on a similar topic, and so we can cover questions better in that way. I think we have about 40 minutes, so we're going to be going through this pretty briskly to make sure that we have time at the end for Q&A. And maybe somebody else should be co-host and share their screen, or?
Yeah, that's going to be my recommendation. Tom or Nathan, can either one of you access our slide deck?
Yeah, working on it right now.
Thank you.
Are we still doing the same as the WV slide deck?
Yep.
Okay.
While Nathan, I'm going to may I talk while you are pulling it up?
Yes, am I co-host yet? I'm the co-host. Okay.
New computers, they're like that. Comcast, what are you going to do?
All right, we should be good.
Thank you. All right, thank you everyone for your patience. So I know a number of you have been paying attention at various points throughout our process. Some of you may have heard some of what we're going to speak about tonight before. Some of you will be hearing a lot of new information and have a lot of questions. So just know that this may be a lot of review for some and brand spanking new information for others. So wherever you are in the journey, we're really happy to be sharing this with you tonight. So like Eleanor mentioned, we packed a lot into this presentation and we'd like to be able to present fully and then answer questions at the end. So in August, we came to the OGCC and gave the background on the soon to be arriving governance and economic analysis. And this evening, we are thrilled to be presenting the report we commissioned, officially titled The Analysis of Governance Options for the Oak Grove Jennings Lodge Area, Phase 1 of Discussions about Governance in Oak Lodge. So, and hereafter, it shall be referred to as the Big Report. So this is the first time that our combined area of Jennings Lodge and Oak Grove has data presenting a comparative analysis amongst multiple governance options. Now, for sure, there have been discussions and varying degrees of initiative over the past few decades. But this report really marks a monumental shift in how Oak Lodge residents can talk about their future. We are proud of the efforts to ascertain this information, and we are excited to present the possibilities within this study. So for those of you who are very new to us, I'd like to give just a quick overview of who we are and how we got here. So first, here is a picture of all 10 of us, 10 individuals who have been working together for 1.5 to 2.5 years. And we're doing things here that we love within our community. Now, while we don't represent the total breadth of diversity and experiences within Oak Lodge, our team spans generations, orientations, ethnicities, and number of years lived here. Some folks amongst us have generational roots and other folks planted within the last 5 years. But among our team, there are two things that fundamentally unite us. One, and first and foremost, is our deep affection for Oak Lodge. And the second is our abiding belief that insofar as our local government is concerned, Oak Lodge can do better. Now, lived experience as community activists within our area has motivated each of our team to commit volunteer hours to this project. I'm going to be going through a few examples which all of our team members have been involved in some way, shape, or form. And they're all examples of how we have felt that Oak Lodge deserved better governmental representation. So I'm going to go through these examples quickly, but most of these examples are more fully fleshed out in op-eds that we wrote within the Clackamas Review, and you can read those on our website. And Nathan, I'll go ahead and cue you for the slide, so you don't need to worry about getting ahead of my speech. So here we have two examples, the Boardman Wetlands Nature Park and Playground in Jennings Lodge, and the intersection of Courtney and River Road in Oak Grove. In both of these locations, OLGP members have advocated to the county for common sense bike and pedestrian safety measures amongst well-known dangerous conditions. And in both instances, the county has yet to provide proactive safety measures to protect bicyclists and those walking in these areas. Next slide. Now here's a photo of Oak Lodge tree canopy. Despite decades of loud, passionate advocacy requesting tree canopy and green space protections, the county has yet to enforce any type of policy to that effect. The next photo is the Evangelical Retreat Center, in which Clackamas County approved a massive housing development in Jennings Lodge without any green space protections or assurances of affordable housing, despite massive public outcry demanding both affordable housing and green space. Next slide. Can you go back? 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 There we go. So here we have the recent Park Avenue Community Project. And as you've heard recently at, I believe, the last meeting or the meeting before that, a group of hyper-local residents supported by county directives, staff support, and $250,000 tax dollars was tasked with redefining land use within the half-mile around the Park Avenue MAC station. Despite the committee meeting every threshold set by the county to accept the committee's recommendations, the recommendations ended up being stalled and essentially dismissed by the Board of County Commissioners. Now, a few vocal critics in the minority opinion voiced ordinary and rote opposition to change and growth. And the county capitulated because ostensibly there's no incentive to provide vision and leadership in a small corner, literally 0.5 miles of within a county larger than the state of Rhode Island. And finally, car lots. So many car lots and so very little business diversity. There is not a whole lot left to say about that particular frustration. So, connected by our shared love for the area and the abiding belief that Oak Lodge can do better by having a responsive local government reflective of Oak Lodge values, we've come together as a team of committed volunteers ready to spend our free time exploring other ways to do things. And in order to explore additional possibilities, we needed information. And to get information, we needed money. Next slide. So we applied for a Metro Planning and Development grant in the spring of 2020 and were awarded $100,000 towards a consultant-led study exploring the possibility and general feasibility of additional governance options. Now, while our team knew what questions we wanted answered within this report, we wanted to make sure that our thinking was in line with the rest of our community. And so we sent out a community survey in November 2020, asking folks to share what they would like to hear from this study. And overwhelmingly, the feedback was consistent with two things. Next slide. First, folks wanted to know any cost of potential change. And two, what's the value of more dollars being spent? Now, like I mentioned earlier, there have been in previous incorporation efforts and discussion, but none in recent years have gone very far. Our understanding of these efforts is that they hinged on the speculation that change is just simply too expensive. We set out to answer that question first: how much potential change will cost, knowing that understandably, this is where folks would go at the outset of these conversations. I'm going to turn it over to Eleanor now to talk a little bit more about the parameters that shaped the study. Eleanor?
Great, thanks, Mitra. Just to get clear on the framework, the overall framework for the study, there were 3 governance scenarios looked at that we could afford in that span of the $100,000 grant. One of them is the area remaining the same as is. A second scenario is the entire area annexing into the city of Milwaukee. And the third scenario is the entire area becoming its own incorporated new city. The second framework piece is the boundary of the study area, which we'll get to. And then the third part is the included services. So those are the 3 things that this presentation is going to go through. Nathan, if you could, next slide. Oh, well, I just did that part. Next. So talking about the boundary of the study area, to the north, it's clear, it's the city of Milwaukee. To the west, it's the river. To the south, it's basically the city of Gladstone. On the east, it gets a little bit trickier, but the desire is that we want to keep the two CPO boundaries of Oak Grove and Jennings Lodge as consistent as possible. The issue comes in with what are called UGMAs, or the Urban Growth Management Areas, for the city of Milwaukee and the city of Gladstone. In agreement with the city of Gladstone, we did include their UGMA to keep the CPO boundaries of Jennings Lodge intact. And in conversation with the city of Milwaukee, we did not include their UGMA. So if you can look at that map and sort of get an idea of this is the whole area that we're talking about. Pretty much it's the CPO boundaries, current ones, of Oak Grove and Jennings Lodge, making Oak Lodge. Next slide. So then the third part of the framework is looking at the service providers. To receive state, what's it called again? State shared revenue, a city needs to provide 4 different services. So in the study that we looked at, the 3 services that are consistent throughout the whole study: Water Services District, the Parks District, and the Fire District. So those things stay the same. But when we looked at the other services of police, stormwater management, transportation, community development, and government administration, those got a little more interesting. And that's what our next speaker will discuss. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Eleanor. So I get the fun part. I get to talk a little bit about the results. And so this quote here is, this is the big takeaway from the report. New governance options appear financially feasible. And I would say that this was definitely news to all of us at OLGP, in that it turns out that this area does have ample property tax value to contribute to running a city, whether it's as annexed to Milwaukee or incorporation. And so, in order to estimate the level of service, the study based its calculations on similarly sized cities in the area, mostly Milwaukee, to keep the comparisons as consistent as possible between the 3 scenarios. And then to estimate revenue generated from taxation, the study uses the assessed property value of the area. And then one important element for estimating revenue for the annexation or incorporation scenarios is that the study also takes state shared revenue into account. And so state shared revenue, I know Eleanor already mentioned it, it is distributed by the state of Oregon to the counties on a per capita basis, but it's also distributed to cities on a per capita basis. Sorry about that. Did not mean to change slides here. So the funds that are distributed to the cities on a per capita basis, that's money that we simply do not get because we are not in a city. So even though we pay for state shared revenue through gas taxes, alcohol taxes, et cetera, though that portion of funds does not come back to our community. And then next, I'd like to share how I used to think about incorporation or annexation and what that would do to property taxes. I thought that we would simply be starting with our current level of taxation. And then in order to fund a city, you would simply have to add on the cost of running a city. But this really isn't the case. And the first element of that is, of course, the state shared revenue that takes off a slice of revenue that otherwise would have to be raised through taxation. And then secondly, what I learned is that county property taxes are less for incorporated residents. So under incorporation or annexation, Clackamas County property taxes do actually decrease. And so together, these 2 elements balance out the cost of being in a city compared to where our taxes are right now. So let's look at some numbers. Sorry, I keep moving things around in the wrong way. So under the annexation scenario, and this is for the predominant tax rate in the area, which is most, if not all of Oak Grove, under the annexation scenario, property taxes would see a net increase of 15.8%. And under the incorporation scenario, which is just a scenario for the study, and the real tax rate would be set by whatever residents decide, in this scenario, the increase was 4.5%. And so we have a couple examples here. The first example is for an assessed value of 150K, which would be pretty typical for the region, as clearly you can't buy a home for 150K in this region, but assessed values are normally a fraction of market value. So under the annexation scenario, if you have an assessed value of 150,000, you would pay approximately $36 more a month, or for an incorporation in this scenario, about $10 a month. And then next, I'd like to share the context of where these tax rates fall in Clackamas County. And so the incorporation scenario, which is labeled as new city in this graph, is right about in the middle of the pack of other cities in Clackamas County at about $19 per thousand. And then you can see Milwaukee is also on the graph here at about, it's 21 per thousand. Also, you can note that Gladstone is there as well at just under 20 per thousand. And I think really notable too is where our current taxes are right now. So right now we pay approximately $18 per thousand. And that's in the middle of the pack, right where that red arrow is that we added. And so I think that's really notable, because right now we pay city level property taxes unincorporated while not receiving those city level services or the city level representation that we could be having. So what I take from this is that different governance options certainly impact taxes, but the differences are not huge to an individual tax bill. We're talking about a range from 18 per thousand to about 21 per thousand. But this does make a large difference in governance. Milwaukee is certainly able to provide more services than the city in our new city scenario. And both certainly provide more services than where we are currently. So I think this really frees us up. The results of this study show that we're able to not just talk about costs, but actually to imagine what we want for our future community, because all of these options appear to be within reach. And now I will pass off the presentation to Tom.
Thanks, Nathan. The governance study assumes that Oak Lodge Water will continue to supply water, sanitary, and stormwater quality services, that North Clackamas Park and Rec will continue to provide those services, and that Clackamas Fire District will continue to provide fire and emergency services. Law enforcement, stormwater management, transportation, community development, and government administration service providers will vary, either out of legal necessity or because of choices made by a new city should one be formed. Next slide, law enforcement. Under option 1, remaining unincorporated, Clackamas County continues to be the provider of municipal police services for Oak Lodge. Paying county taxes, a local option levy, and the enhanced law enforcement district tax, the Oak Lodge area contributes about 14% of the Clackamas County Sheriff local policing budget. However, Oak Lodge area generates almost a quarter of law enforcement contacts. For option 2, annexation to the city of Milwaukee, the city would provide police services for Oak Lodge. property taxes generated by the Oak Lodge area for the city of Milwaukee would cover the cost of providing police services for the area. One interesting finding is that although Milwaukee police log a similar proportion of contacts for their jurisdiction as the sheriff's office does for Oak Lodge, the city of Milwaukee is able to provide that level of service for significantly less cost than Clackamas County. For police services in option 3, incorporation, we held Milwaukee's level of service constant to identify the property tax rate needed to support a similar level of service as we would expect under option 2, annexation. In reality, the level of service would be determined by the new city's government. More research would be needed to understand the relatively high cost of Clackamas County Sheriff's services, and a more detailed analysis of the city of Milwaukee to identify marginal costs of providing additional police services to all or portions of Oak Lodge's area. Worth noting is that the county sheriff refused to release information requested by consultants producing this report. Why that is, we do not know. Next slide, stormwater. Stormwater is unique, being the only service where responsibility is shared by 2 providers. Oak Lodge Water Services District is responsible for watershed protection services and would remain in that capacity under all 3 of the modeled options. Under option 1, unincorporated, Clackamas County is responsible for stormwater management services. Presently, Clackamas County does not have a specific budget for stormwater capital infrastructure, and no stormwater facility plan exists for the Oak Lodge area. Accordingly, the revenues and expense for this option reflect only the budget of Oak Lodge Water Services for watershed protection services. For option 2, annexation, the city of Milwaukee would be responsible for stormwater management. Oak Lodge households and businesses would pay the same fees as those within the city of Milwaukee, which funds the city's substantial stormwater management program. As shown in our model, a significant amount of revenue would be generated from the Oak Lodge area that could fund stormwater infrastructure improvements in Oak Lodge. A stormwater facilities plan would need to be developed for the area to identify needed improvements before we can reliably estimate the level of expense needed to address our needs. Here we show projected expenses in the Oak Lodge area proportionate to population. For stormwater management, under option 3, incorporation, we held Milwaukee's level of service constant to identify the property tax rate and other revenue needed to support a similar level of service as we would expect under option 2. In reality, the level of service would be determined by the new city's government and their adopted stormwater facilities plan. The shared nature of surface water services has been highlighted by the recent refusal of the county board chair to schedule a hearing on Oak Lodge Water Services District desire to become an authority until the district produces a plan to control street flooding, which is actually a responsibility of the county. Next slide, transportation. Streets in Oak Lodge are maintained by Clackamas County. The largest funding source for this is the state, mostly from gas tax and weight mile revenue. Annexation to Milwaukee would lead to greater revenue generation from the fees and charges collected by the city, as well as significantly higher expenditures for Milwaukee's higher street standards. Transportation in the incorporation option has been treated differently because our relatively large population and low total road length, about 78 miles, would result in sufficient revenue to provide a higher level of road maintenance than the county now provides, even without the extra fees and charges that the city of Milwaukee collects. Next slide, community development. Community development includes land use planning, permitting, economic development, and code enforcement. Long-term, the higher level of annual revenue is expected to be generated under the annexed and incorporated options should also translate to a higher level of expenditures in the study area when compared to the unincorporated option. These are the services that would likely show the greatest difference in the annexed and incorporated options versus the status quo, because county services tend to be county-wide in scope instead of being tailored to the needs and desires of our particular urbanized area. This is illustrated by the 2 large-scale community planning efforts by Oak Lodge residents and businesses in recent decades, the McLaughlin Area Plan and the Park Avenue Community Project. Neither effort has resulted in change to Clackamas County ordinances. In order to maximize benefit from light rail's significant transit investments, local jurisdictions generally have created station area zoning overlays before a line goes into service. The Park Avenue station, which began servicing the Orange Line in 2015, still lacks such a zoning overlay. Next slide, government administration. The cost of government administration is generally higher in cities. In the next option, based on the City of Milwaukee data, revenue would more than double according to the analytical approach used in the governance study. Consultants note that a marginal cost analysis might reveal economies of scale that would constrain necessary increases somewhat. The modeled incorporation option analysis of revenue for administrative costs is based on data from the City of Happy Valley, which was selected for its similarities to the study area in terms of geographic location, population size, and portfolio of services provided. It shows a more modest increase than the annexed option, about 32%. Modeling shows administrative expenditures greater than revenues under all 3 options. Consultants suggest this imbalance would likely disappear under a multi-year analysis, something that is beyond the scope of the current study. And next we have, is this back to Eleanor or Mitra?
It's me.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Tom. So one question that should be probably paramount in most folks' minds is, what would we get for our money if we pay more taxes to become part of a city? And that's a good question. So I want to speak about 2 aspects, although I'm sure there's going to be more. First, by becoming part of a city, whether we choose to annex or incorporate into our own new city, we will have greater representation in our local governance and more influence as a result. Secondly, by becoming part of a city with increased representation, we would have increased opportunity to shape policies that reflect the local community needs, hopes, and dreams. Next slide. So first, let's take a look at the kind of representation we presently have. We have 5 county commissioners who are all elected by the county electorate. There are about 427,000 folks living in Clackamas County. This means there are 83,500 residents per commissioner. And again, our commissioners are not elected by area. They can live anywhere in the entire county. And they are elected to represent the whole county. So one of our current commissioners, Commissioner Savas, lives in Oak Lodge. The others come from Molalla, Sandy, and Lake Oswego. This means there's just one perspective coming from our area. And conversely, there's only one representative who has to live the consequences of any of the decisions that they're making, or rather not making, about vision and leadership within our area. Next slide. Now, if the entire Oak Lodge area annexed into Milwaukee, it would swell the city's population to about 48,000. There are 5 city councilors. This means there would be 1 councilor for every 9,600 residents. And all of those councilors would need to live in Milwaukee or the Oak Lodge area, which would mean an increased understanding of the area, a variety of perspectives, and greater influence for the people who live here. Next slide. There should be one more back from that. There we go. So if the entire Oak Lodge area with its nearly 28,000 residents decided to incorporate into a new city, they'd have at least 5 city councilors, and there would be minimum 1 councilor for every 5,560 residents. And with each of those councilors living within the new city in the Oak Lodge area, the opportunity for local input on issues of concern to the area would increase. So clearly, becoming part of a city through annexation or incorporation would increase the representation and the clout of the residents of Oak Lodge. Next slide. People living in the Oak Lodge area have many ideas for the future of this area. Developing and acting on a shared community vision would be a positive, non-financial benefit of becoming part of a city. Our county commissioners, they have to look at the entirety of the whole county. And I know that it sounds like we're throwing the county under the bus a whole lot in this presentation. Generally, our issues have never been about the elected officials. It's the structure of the system. The county is good at doing county things. It is exceedingly difficult for a small section of the county to develop around its own unique vision when it is not incorporated. In a city, residents could plan not only for more affordable housing units, but for the design standards and zoning that would help to create a neighborhood that would be pleasant to live in. Well, I mean, like the Park Avenue Community Project tried to do, rather than just building apartments on a busy highway. In a city, residents could choose to bring in the voices that are not heard, those traditionally marginalized, those of young families, students, renters, immigrants, and others. Equity is more attainable with a localized government. In a city, residents can make livability policies on the local level. For example, policies to save trees, build parks, provide cluster housing, and to become more sustainable and adaptable in the face of climate change. Becoming incorporated provides more options. I'm going to turn it over to Eleanor.
Great, thank you, Mitra. So this has been a lot of information. It's a whole bunch of information. So let's go back for a moment to the beginning. The purpose of this grant was to basically answer 2 questions. How much would any change cost? And what would we get for those dollars? So now this community has data-based factual foundation to answer those questions. And in addition to establishing that essential and valuable information, through the course of this study, we learned a number of other key additional conclusions: feasibility, level of service, sub-area autonomy, and that there's lots of different considerations. So we're going to try to save you from reading the whole 123 pages, but it's fascinating if you want to get into it. So next slide, please. Feasibility. Oh, I guess that's not the next slide. So go back. Okay, so feasibility, just quickly. There's the question of, is this feasible to annex or incorporate? And the answer is a resounding yes, which Nathan so well put together. So level of service. When we talk about level of service, we're really talking about 2 things. We're talking about both the number of services and the level of those services. And those are things that would be determined if the area were to incorporate onto its own. Those levels would be determined, and that would affect the tax level. So it's really up to the residents of this area to make those determinations. A third issue is a third conclusion is the idea of sub-area autonomy. There's no illusion that this whole area of Oak Grove and Jennings Lodge together would ever do the same thing, not necessarily. A northern part of the Oak Grove area might want to annex into Milwaukee. The central area might want to incorporate. The southern area might want to stay the same, or some other different parts of that. There's the opportunity, again, for sub-area autonomy. For the sake of this grant, we had to do one whole thing to look at it so that we had apples to apples comparisons. So again, there are 3 scenarios, and there's going to be lots of fluctuation that's possible within those. When we look at other major consideration, economics are one part that have to do with incorporation or annexing, but values are another really important reason that people create cities, create communities in these ways. So, you know, when you're on 99 driving south and you get to about Holgate where that La Corrida restaurant is, and there's that sign that says Milwaukee 4, Oregon City 10. Well, we're that 6 miles of undefined space in between. And we think that we really can do better. So as far as timing goes, this is just the first phase. This research study was to answer a number of questions. It's going to ask a whole bunch more of questions. This is not a campaign. There is no deadline. We're trying to provide information that the community has asked clearly for in the past. Again, this is the first phase. We're wanting to take this out to the community. And that's where I'm going to turn this over to myself. Sorry, next slide. So the next, well, you know, we haven't done this part yet. So the next step in all this is more discussion and research and more outreach and engagement. We have 2 PSU students right now helping to further the research. And we want to have lots of further engagement throughout the whole area. Cole, sorry, Nathan, are there any more slides or is that everything? Okay, great. Yes. So here's the idea between the discussion and the research and the action of where we go next. If you can see on the slide, the idea is that we've done this initial piece of research, and then that drives the different outreach to community members. That goes down the community discussions, and then that will drive any kind of potential drive for change. So again, there's 3 different options on the table now, but who knows what there might be. And again, you can see this loop that there's more research, more engagement. This is, again, the beginning of that. Between now and the end of the year, we're reaching out to different groups in the area, the CPOs, Kiwanis, Rotary, different groups. In January, we'll be starting really a more engaged effort to reach more individual community members. You know, the holidays are coming up, so we just want to sort of get our feet on the ground, understand this research more, see where the holes are, what other research we want to do, and take this out to the community in a fuller, richer way. Are there any other slides, or I'm not quite sure? Yes. So what we're asking you all to do is share this information. You're here now on the Oak Grove Community Council meeting to understand about this. Our website, you can see there, it's oaklodgegovernanceproject.org. You can email us directly at oaklodgegovernance@gmail.com. Mitra can handle all those fabulous social media addresses because I'm just not very media savvy. But the idea is spread the word. Help us to spread this word, spread this material to everybody in the community so that we can all together understand how we're a community, what are our values, what's our identity. Let's be proud of where we live. Wouldn't that be great? Thank you so much. So I don't know if we have any questions or people have put anything in the chat, or Joseph, have any questions come in so far, or?
There was a question from Richard about what the current percentage of assessed value to real value is for houses. Basically, if you bought your house at $500,000, what would be the approximate assessed value currently?
It's an interesting question. I'm just looking at the tax bill, you know, for my own home that just arrived, and sort of looking at those differences with different eyes, having been involved in this project. I have no idea. Does anybody have any idea of that?
$18.11 per 1,000.
So whatever, but is that the difference between the assessed value and the market value? I mean,
No.
No. So
the assessed value,
is
according to the Clackamas County Assessor, is 64% of market value, which is different from the tax rate. That's the percentage of market value to assessed value.
Mm-hmm.
The other question was, what would be the current tax rate? And I think Mitra already answered that question.
Right. So the current tax rate will be the same.
11 per thousand.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the tax rate in the Oak Grove area, and the Jennings Lodge area, which is actually part of the Oregon City School District, has a significantly lower total tax rate because of the school district taxes. And so although that wasn't reflected in the materials, your audience tonight is Oak Grove and not Jennings Lodge, and so that seems appropriate. But for anyone who's here from Jennings Lodge, there is a kind of a big difference between those two tax rates between our area and there. So I haven't seen any other questions come through the chat, so we can certainly open up the floor.
Mm-hmm. And I just also wanted to mention, Joseph, thank you for speaking about Gladstone. One of the PSU students who's going to be helping us is going to be looking specifically at Gladstone and trying to do a similar sort of project, looking at the finances of if the area were to annex into Gladstone. So we're trying to supplement what we have from this phase 1 study with additional research. So hopefully we'll be having that material available to us in the spring. Because again, this is a marathon. This is a long project. This is not something quick and simple. There isn't a clear choice and decision on what do we do. Again, this is about values. It's about how do we see ourselves? Who are we? When we talk about the details about, say, law enforcement, there's the numbers that are involved in it, but also what kind of police department do we want to have? What kind of community services do we want to offer? Those are other rich questions. Again, this presentation is just really from the economic research that was done. And the other questions, those values about how do we want to live here with one another? Do we want to protect the natural resources and habitats we have? Those are other value questions to have to really connect with each other and understand each other and have a collective sense of identity for this area.
So again, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in through the chat. Does anyone from the floor have any questions for the presentation team?
Linda.
Yes, if we incorporate, would that give us better control on what happens on McLaughlin?
Yes. A resounding yes.
Can you
more specific? Right. So the idea, one of the things that we're wanting to also have research is, say, take a 4-block area on McLaughlin and look at the economics of if and when the zoning could be changed to be better suited to today's development situation, reality. How might the tax revenues alter? How could we change how there's trees and setbacks and safe sidewalks and all sorts of different things? There's all sorts of ways that we could change the zoning and encourage the businesses that people in the area would want to participate in. And again, with COVID, things are changing so much, but there's lots of ways. And again, it's not fair to ask a rural form of government to deal with urban level of planning and zoning. Mitra, do you have something to add?
Yeah, another big one for me is that we would have an economic development, at least one economic development person on staff, probably 2, maybe even 3. You know, there is one economic development person for the entire county working on all economic development county-wide. That means that we are a blip, maybe occasionally in their mind as an area that needs a little bit of additional support. And so if we have 1, 2, or 3 staff people just focused on our little corner, then the idea of business diversity also really gets some legs, and we can start shifting, the business community towards things that are reflective of what those of us who live here want to see.
Also with that, we had an interesting conversation with Representative Karen Power, and she made the point that when you have an advocate, there's economic development, but if you have a corpus, a body, then you can advocate for, there's additional funding out there and all sorts of different micro grants and different things that she's been able to bring into the Milwaukee area. We don't have that. And under our current governance, we can't. So if you look at, say, what that sort of revitalization that's happened down in Oregon City, that's because there were devoted staff people to work with businesses, to encourage them to come, to make those things happen. So yeah, there could be a lot more say, that the community could have a lot more say in what we want to have there. Yeah.
I'll throw out a little bit more of a technical answer to that. Cities in Oregon have, have the option of absolute authority over land use and zoning. And so a city that is here would have the ability to change the zoning on McLaughlin, or whatever it wanted to do. It would ultimately be up to the policy set by city leadership. And one of the four services, or one of the services that would qualify for the state shared revenue, is planning and subdivision zoning control. And so that certainly is one of the key services that cities provide in this state. And it would probably be the kind of service that city leaders from this area would be interested in providing. So most likely a city that formed here would take that on in order to qualify for that revenue. And then you'd be able to influence your local leaders to a greater degree perhaps than county leadership in terms of land use authority issues here on McLaughlin. That's the technical answer to that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
We're going to be presenting more in the future. Clearly this is an ongoing sort of thing. So I guess with that, thank you so much, everyone, and on to the rest of the meeting.
Thank you all. I really appreciate your time coming here. And as everybody probably saw on the slide of the steering committee members, myself and a couple of your other board members have been participating in the steering committee for Oak Lodge Governance Project since its inception. And so we are keeping a close eye on that and really excited about where we are with it. So happy to have them here tonight to present. Thanks, everybody. Go ahead.
Sorry. And if anyone wants to read the study or see more detail about what was in there that was discussed tonight, again, you can find it on our website, which is oaklodgegovernanceproject.org. Thanks.
Thanks, Eleanor and Mitra and Nathan and Tom. I really appreciate your time. So I'm going to jump in here and share my screen. We've got a LUART update. Last month, we did a presentation for you about the subdivision up on Oatfield. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback in my ears. Please make sure you're muted. The 16305 Southeast Oatfield. This was the one that we had. We agreed to send a letter and did. We also have a new decision on business on McLaughlin, the old Gigi's corner development, and then notice of a hearing coming up. So the first thing I'm going to show you is just kind of a revisit the Oatfield subdivision. It's between Rothy and Vineyard, really in Nath, actually. And then it's a 12-lot major subdivision in the R8.5 zone. And we had concerns about this one because of trees, and there's the site plan. So the key issues were the tree preservation priorities, the safety of the intersection design, the fact that it sits on an ancient landslide, and the seriousness of the hazards there, and the fact that neighbors do report water features on the site that were not documented in the application. And so we recommended a series of conditions meant to address these, and actually several of these were included in the staff report to the hearings officer when they had the hearing last month. And so we submitted a 5-page letter really detailing what our concerns were, and now we wait. The hearings officer closed the record last week, and we'll find out more about that in probably a week or two. It usually takes a little time. So one thing about this application is that we have been contacted by several of the neighbors in the area, and one of the vision of some of the neighbors has been to try to approach a conservation nonprofit or a land trust about preserving this site. And because it is very heavily forested with large mature trees that really help with the water issues, the surface water issues, that really could aggravate the landslide, the ancient landslide if those trees are removed, which they are proposed to be as part of this development. And so we did receive a request from neighbors to sign on to a form letter that they would send out to nonprofits and land trusts in the area, perhaps nationally, to try to see if there's any interest in acquiring this site, which the landowner has said through their real estate agent that they will entertain offers. So sometimes in the past, we've had occasion where a subdivision has come through and, we haven't, particularly liked the terms of it. And, the owner developer was saying, hey, if you're willing to, buy the site or find someone that can buy the site, then, you can do what you want with it. And so the neighbors are taking that to heart and have reached out to us to see if we're willing to sign on to their letter. So here's kind of the key elements of the letter really quick, and then I'm going to ask one of those neighbors to speak. It's directed again to land trust and conservation nonprofits. The site is one of the few remaining large undeveloped forested parcels in the area. There are ecological, geological, and social benefits for conserving the site. It's situated in a parks deficient part of our community, and then the letter goes on to detail the neighbor's vision for restoration and conservation, and requests that the recipients consider acquisition of all or a portion of the site. And so I did see that I think Eleanor raised her hand, or did that? Nope, that Eleanor put her hand down. So what I'd like to do is stop sharing my screen for a minute, and I'd like to ask Tori Simons if she would like to offer a few comments about this letter. So Tori, are you here with us?
I'm here.
Okay, feel free to add any other comments about your letter in addition to what I've just said.
Okay, yeah, so basically my overarching goal that I would love to achieve would be to create a land trust that focuses specifically on our community, and then in purchasing little plots of land like this as they come up for sale or before they come up for sale, to help preserve a lot of the few remaining undeveloped parcels of land that we have here. But creating a land trust takes a little bit to get up and off the ground. So in the meantime, I thought, hey, why don't we reach out to land trusts that are already in existence and have funding and have everything in place to be able to do something like this. I have reached out already to a few, such as the Columbia Land Trust, but they're such a big land trust, and this is such a small parcel of land. They weren't interested, but I've talked with a few people in the land trust community, if you will, and got some advice about who to reach out to. And so, yeah, I put together this letter kind of focusing on what's important about this specific lot. It's one of the few remaining, not only forested parcels in this area, but an oak forest, which is a Oregon white oak is the species of concern, and only about 3 to 5% of all the native oak escapes are remaining in the Willamette Valley because they've all been cut down. So even preserving the few, I think there's like 100, 200 Oregon white oaks on this lot, as well as Oregon ash. It goes a long way, especially in an area where they've already been cut down. And then also just talking about, touching on the diverse economic or socioeconomics of this area. There are a lot of low income apartment buildings just off of Harold, which is only a block away from this lot, and mobile home parks, etc. And for a lot of those people, this is the only bit of greenery that they have access to without having to try it across McLaughlin. And so, yeah, kind of going off on, on a little tangent. I just thought, hey, it's worth trying to see if there's somebody out there who would be interested, who already has the finance and expertise in place, to see if they'd be interested in this. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that explanation, Tori. Do we have, oh, Eleanor, I see your hand. Go for it.
So I would like to make a motion that the Oak Grove Community Council write a letter of support, citing those different things. I mean,
we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Valerie seconds. Okay. And so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Rich.
I just wanted to note, I'll talk about it later, but I attended the county's discussion of House Bill 2021, and it's going to take effect June next year, and it creates the ability for any lot that's available for a single family home to have a duplex.
Oh, you mean House Bill 2001?
Oh, 2001.
You said 2021. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Is that,
yeah, I
does
just
that
wanted
apply
to,
to
in terms
this
of
motion?
this, as it applies to this, it's one thing to talk about preserving the trees, but another thing is the traffic that gets created. And so it's just another reason, an additional reason, because if there's twice as much traffic as is entailed by just subdivision that was proposed, that's a lot of traffic in a small area. It sort of gets back to the OLGP stuff about having local control. In this case, it's coming down from the state, whether you incorporate as a separate place or join Milwaukee, it's still going to be the same if it's an approved subdivision, that for 12 lots and an approved subdivision now for 24 houses. It's another reason to consider finding a land trust that can take over this property and preserve it.
Eleanor, we still have a question pending. You have a comment?
I just was wanting to add, quality of life, in the quality of what these different reasons are. And anyway, Tori, I'd be happy to work with you on some things if you wanted to connect together. So.
And Chips. We have a motion pending. Did you have a comment?
Yes, I do. I have a comment about this motion that's pending. Okay. We live in Oak Grove. Whatever happens to Oak Grove in the future, it is still Oak Grove. Many of us have lived in these oaks. And if we don't take this opportunity to do everything that we can to preserve these, I believe that Tori said 200 oaks growing there. I mean, this is what we have to do. We're compelled. This is so important. If there's a way we can support this by the strongest kind of letter that we could write. That's my comment.
So perhaps for clarification, we are being asked to sign on to Tori's letter, which we distributed with the meeting announcement. And so I would just like to clarify, Eleanor, your motion is to sign on to her letter.
Yes.
Yes, I would. I would like to sign on to her letter, and at the same time, with that in a different motion, but we'll have to do it, to write our own letter of support from our own Oak Grove Community Council.
Okay.
That's a different motion.
Okay. So for this motion, to sign on to the letter distributed with the meeting announcement, we're going to take the we have to do a roll call vote, or do we want to, actually, can we just vote through the chat to Jane again?
Yes.
I think that is a very clean way of handling this. So if everyone could open the chat to Jane and say yes or no.
And again, it's just voting members.
And then that's voting members only. Thank you, Eleanor. And then if that happens quickly enough, perhaps Jane will have an answer for us.
I shall.
What's that?
Perhaps I shall.
Let's see. So I'm normally we would wait for the results of the motion before we move on.
Might need to move on.
Okay. We will come back to this. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Tori. Really appreciate your time.
Yes.
And so let's see. So this is about the letter. So then the next thing up, oh, that was the motion. So the next thing that happened recently is we received a decision for the Gigi's Diner redevelopment. And it's a proposal to redevelop it with a quick service restaurant, drive-through, and a baked branch. So, you know, kind of consistent with what we already see on McLaughlin in a lot of places. Here's the landscaping plan. They will be adding street trees on Concord and McLaughlin. It will be a Chipotle and a Chase Bank. And here's the site plan a little bit more close. Wow, that really looks like garbage. I'm sorry, everybody. That was what was distributed with the application. Kind of the best we can do, but Concord will get sidewalks and street trees and a bike lane as part of this development. Here's again the landscaping plan where you can see more of the kind of the outlines of the trees that will go in. And then there's kind of a few pages of conditions of approval. I won't make everyone suffer through reading all of those, but here's what the two new buildings are going to look like. And some of the conditions are, and this was a new one for me to see in the decision, is says the Chipotle in particular needs to provide additional durable facade materials in keeping with the emerging character of the McLaughlin corridor. I have not seen that as a condition of approval before, so I guess first time for everything. They need additional architectural features at the roof line. I guess it's pretty boring. Street trees, including at least one evergreen tree. Sidewalks, bike lanes, stormwater management, and street lighting for both McLaughlin and Concord frontages, and additional right-of-way dedication on Concord to make it a little bit wider because it's incredibly narrow right there and has no sidewalk. It is. So that's actually, I went ahead of where I wanted to be. So that's it for the Chipotle and Chase. I guess I missed my slide in here where I was going to talk about the current state of the housing strategies project. I'll stop sharing right now. So the housing strategies project. Oh, Eleanor, did you have a question about? You're muted.
I had a question on that. Is there, what's the egress? I didn't see it quickly enough. The egress off of on McLaughlin and on Concord, or?
Nope, just Concord. It'll be a right-in only on McLaughlin. But then the two-way driveway will be on Concord. And so they're consolidating all those driveways to get as much distance between McLaughlin and the driveway on Concord as they possibly can.
Great, because that's such a busy intersection and there's so many egresses. So great, thank you.
They're going to be cleaning that up and closing those off.
Great.
Okay, so the housing strategies project is, there's another hearing coming up next week where housing strategies phase 1, which is focusing on the commercial multifamily in commercial zones. parking and of the affordable housing bonus program will be heard by the county commission again, I think next week. Maybe Commissioner Savas knows what date that is. I don't actually have it in front of me. The other thing that's coming up with that, as Rich was mentioning in our last item, was that the county's implementation of House Bill 2001 is due to be implemented by the end of June 2022. And so they're just now really starting to get going with that. And we haven't received notification about the task force or advisory group that would be participating in that yet. But once we do, we'll share that information with you and keep you all posted about where that project is and where it's going. But as Rich said, it is a state mandate that we allow, thanks Commissioner Savas, November 3rd, that hearing for Housing Strategies Phase 1 with the Board of County Commissioners. So again, just to revisit really quick, House Bill 2001, which is part of Housing Strategies Phase 2, is a state mandate that the county has to implement that will allow multiple types of structures or how multiple housing types into our residential neighborhoods. And so there's obviously design standards and everything that can be applied, but the state is issuing a mandate to allow those in the urban areas. So we'll keep you posted on that, and any opportunities to engage or have presentations from the county staff, will definitely set those up and keep you guys posted. So we're going to move into our committee updates portion. We're about 10 minutes behind schedule, and so we'll just kind of move through this as quickly as we can. First up, CERT. Rich, you want to take it away?
Yep. The information on CERT is that we have decentralized. Members have stepped up to take responsibilities for aspects previously administered by Greg Wennerson, who remains a very active, involved member. CERT received a $1,250 grant to set up a GMRS repeater. We are currently setting that up, and it will be permanently installed at Rose Villa within a month. This should provide GMRS radio coverage across most of our area and also with Milwaukee CERT.
Awesome, thanks, Rich. You're up next actually with the CPO Summit update.
Whoops, okay. At the CPO Summit, basically, we talked about the House Bill 2001, but we also talked about, let's see, I wrote it down somewhere. Oh, I've lost it. No, it's gone. We talked about CCI, which is the Committee for Citizen Involvement that's been around apparently for 20 some years. And the members of the CPO Summit, which are representatives from various functioning CPOs in the county, feel that the CCI is not necessarily stepping up to the responsibilities that it has. It has a lot to do with land use and planning and taking our voice to the county for general things, not for specific things in which the CPOs have individual responsibilities. Part of the discussion was about CPOs that do exist being able to provide the forum for areas that don't have functioning CPOs to be able to represent them. Oak Lodge itself isn't contiguous to any areas that don't have representation to the CCI or to the county. for land use matters. So I'm not sure that it totally affects us, though they're trying to figure out a way to allow some kind of way for non-represented areas to be represented. One of the things that a CPO does is it can ask for I don't know what the word is, Joseph, not a review, but you can challenge a decision without having to pay a fee if you're the CPO.
Appeal.
Appeal, that's the word I wanted. Thank you. You can appeal without having to pay a fee if you're a CPO. And the county people expressed an interest in creating temporary expansions, notifying that area of something going on, and then allowing that area to have representation for appealing a decision. If they have people that want to do that, and it's a vote by the member. It's not real clear because our membership is still limited to people who reside in our area. And it's really just in the beginning stages of thinking about it. And that's primarily what we talked about at the CPO Summit.
Awesome, thanks, Rich. Mark, did you have an update from the Oak Lodge Water Services Board of Directors?
Sure, thanks very much, Joseph. Just very quickly, 2 weeks ago, a little over 2 weeks ago, a couple of us from the Board of Oak Lodge Water Services District met with the Board of County Commissioners, basically asking them to initiate a process that would result in scheduling of a couple of hearings on the formation of converting the district to an authority. Didn't go quite the way we wanted, but that's okay. We're nimble and we can work with that. Basically, the county commissioners asked for additional information related to outreach efforts in better informing the community related to this proposal. And so we are working on that, scheduling some additional outreach efforts. In addition, in your bills in the November, December billing cycle, all the customers will receive a newsletter that will talk about sort of the who, what, when, where, and particularly the why of water authority formation. And so we'll start doing that. We also anticipate holding at least 1 or 2 public meetings sometime after the first of the year to provide an opportunity, not just for kind of one-way communication to the public, but also getting some feedback from the public in terms of interest, support, questions, concerns related to authority formation. The other question that the Board of County Commissioners raised was related to stormwater. Tom had mentioned that earlier. And right now, I'd say we're working with the commissioners individually to better understand their concerns and develop a strategy to address those concerns. So I don't have a lot of specifics at this point, but again, I think obviously we all share the concern, and it's going to take some time to figure out how we sort of collectively address the stormwater concerns in the region. Obviously, that was one of the things we wanted to do through authority formation, because regardless, as Tom mentioned, it's going to require a substantial investment, and we think the certainty that comes with authority formation provides a good foundation for making those kinds of investments. And at the end of the day, we want to address the commissioner's concerns and figure out a strategy to best do that. So stay tuned. And then the good news is, I was going to say next month, but I guess it's really December 1st. At the December 1st meeting, we'll be back. We'll have a more complete presentation for you again, sort of overviewing some of the specifics related to proposal for authority formation, and hopefully we'll have more information both on the outreach efforts as well as strategies related to stormwater. That's what I know.
Awesome, thanks, Mark. Valerie, did you have an update from the EDC?
Just really quickly, I would just say that there was a presentation this morning about the climate action plan that the county task force is putting together, and their goal is to have a solid climate action plan that can be approved and in place by 2023. That's the plan. The plan is to help the county know how to become carbon neutral by 2050. So that's the goal, is getting in place. So that was interesting. I thought people would find that interesting. They're working on that. The other thing is there was an update about labor in the area, and also had some interesting information. For one thing, where the county is, unemployment in Oregon overall is at 4.7%, which is really pretty good, but there's some caveats to that. In Clackamas County, manufacturing has been very slow to come back. It's only about 45% of what the pre-COVID recession figures were. And there was also some interesting data about why people aren't going back taking jobs. We keep hearing about that in the news. And the number one reason is because they have an employed spouse. And so they don't have the need to do that. And second reason is because they have some financial cushion in some other way that doesn't require them to go back right now. Third reason is because they have care responsibilities. That's both for children or for elders. And as we mentioned last week, last month, we continue to be a childcare desert out in this area. We don't have that. Fourth reason is the fear of COVID in the workplace. And of the very last place is because people were getting unemployment payments. So just so people know, that's way down. When you look at the bars, that is way down. Top reason is because they don't really have to right now. And so they have somebody else employed in the family. So it's interesting. And the way the employment is in our county right now, the way the numbers look, there's one unemployed person actively looking for a job for every job that's open. Now, that might sound really good, like we should just match them up. But actually what that means is there's not choices that fit a person's talents, and a job doesn't have a pool of people who are interested in that work. So it makes some complicating situation in the county right now. So anyway, those are the things that we learn about at 7:30 in the morning if you're waking up and have had your coffee.
Great, thanks, Valerie. Suzanne, did you want to provide an update from HDOG?
Thanks, Joseph. For those of you who may not know, I'm Suzanne Wolf, and I currently serve as the president and secretary for Historic Downtown Oak Grove, also called HDOG. Our mission is basically to establish positive social, community, and economic growth in the Oak Grove area. With that, we are interested in supporting the Oak Lodge Governance Project efforts, and by providing a platform for community discussions. At our last meeting in September, the HDOG membership passed a motion to work with the Oak Lodge Governance Project Committee to create a plan to host a series of public meetings in Oak Grove. These meetings will take place after the first of the year. And at our November general membership meeting, we are starting with a brief presentation by some of the committee members, a brief presentation about the study, followed by 45 minutes of questions and answers. This meeting is scheduled on Thursday, November 18th at 11 a.m. It has been highly publicized, so we are hoping for a good turnout. This will be a virtual meeting, and if you would like to attend, just send me an email at contact.hdog@gmail.com, and I will send you the URL to join the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And then up next, Anita, do you have an update from the parks?
Yeah, I'll say a few things. Before I came tonight to this meeting, I went to the Milwaukee Parks and Recreation Board meeting to learn more about how they operate and contrast it to our park situation in unincorporated Oak Grove. During the meeting, 3 new staff members were introduced. So picture this, they have a Parks Development Coordinator now, an urban forester, and a new natural resources technician, and they were introduced by the city's Climate and Natural Resources Manager. There was also talk at their meeting of developing a tree protection ordinance for private land. They already have a tree protection ordinance for city land there. And there was also talk about Milwaukee's Arbor Day tree giveaway, which is supported by their tree canopy committee in the city, which exists alongside a Parks Board and a Parks Foundation. So these are the kinds of positions and entities and ordinances supporting parks and green space and climate change response that a city can have. And this is the kind of governance that might prevent the forested land on Oatfield that we looked at tonight and last meeting from being clear cut. And as Eleanor remarked, if you're a city, you can also get grants and funding from sources that we might not be able to get as an unincorporated area. And there's a piece of land in Milwaukee that they talked about at the meeting today that Metro had purchased to save it from being developed. So I don't know, I just want to look more into that. Like, is Metro another possibility for saving some of our forested land? So that's how I was impressed today being at the Milwaukee Parks Board meeting about what it can be like if you are a city. And then on another topic, some of you know that a property owner who lives by the railroad trestle near Rivervilla Park installed a chain link fence running from his property down into the river to keep people off the beach next to his land. And a number of community members reported it to the Oregon Department of State Lands. And that department has opened up an enforcement case against this person that requires them to remove the fence within 30 days. So that's how that's playing out. And I would also like to say that Chips had mentioned doing a motion that we write a letter from us as the CPO also to protect that land that's on Oatfield. And I would like that to move forward.
I'll second that motion. And Tori has a
Who
question.
would this letter be addressed to?
I'll ask Chips that.
Chip?
Yes, am I muted?
Nope. No, you are now. There
I
you go.
Sorry, I'm in front of my fireplace. I would suggest that we write that letter to whoever the owners of this property, whoever's developing this property, but I would also suggest that we write this letter to the county commissioners. We send it to several people. I think we should send it to the Audubon Society. I think we should send it to several people. And this is a really important thing that we have an opportunity to be out in front of. And especially since we're very lucky because the owner of the property has expressed willingness to talk to other people and to do something. So we want to develop a kind of help support a campaign to make sure that this happens rather than simply be bystanders. So Joseph, I'll need your help in figuring out who to do that with.
Okay, can we put together kind of a better or a more complete proposal and come back on December 1st? With a motion?
What's the time on that? I see, that's the problem with December 1st. I don't know what the timing of this is. I think we need to move pretty quickly.
I don't think we need to move that quickly. And, you know, it's kind of late right now to be drafting a letter. by motion.
No, not now. Yeah, I know, not, but we could draft it soon. Maybe Valerie.
Yeah, so I'd like to bring it, I'd like to bring perhaps a draft letter back to the community council for consideration. But right now we have a motion and a second, and I've got like 4 hands up.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
you know, I'm
can't
just stating
tell
my
you,
preference.
I'm sorry, I can't tell you to who it should be addressed because I just heard about this and I'm not exactly sure, but I think we can figure out who to address it to within the next day or so. Perhaps Valerie has a suggestion.
I'm going to try to, something about this specific, or I'm going to go through in sequence of hands raised right now. Tori, you're up first. You've been waiting very patiently.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump on a couple of things that I heard, jump in on them. So regarding Metro back in 2019, I contacted them about purchasing this lot with some of their grants that they had allocated and whatnot. And I was told that while they acknowledged and recognized that our area was severely underserved in parks, that they had no interest in remedying that at this moment. And none of the money was allocated for our area, and nowhere in our area was identified as being on their future list. So that was a bit difficult. I also contacted back in 2019 North Clackamas Parks and Rec when Scott Archer was still on it, and had a meeting with them and was again told basically the same thing, that they recognized that our area was extremely underserved in green spaces and all of that. But once again, none of their money was allocated to our area. So that's just where I've gotten with contacting Metro and contacting North Clackamas Parks and Rec, and is why I turned to other sources and other directions, was because, and just really quickly, one of the things that Metro told me was there are no voices for our area, and unless they hear voices from our area, we will not be seen. So that kind of plays into the whole incorporation idea. It would help give all the individual voices of this area a unified voice that hopefully would be heard then by people in Metro. So anyway, that's just quickly touching on that. And then I also have a huge list of people that I'm going to be sending my letter to, which I have revised some since that copy that Joseph attached, just to make it a little more clear cut and touching more on, you know, hot topics. But I have a huge list of land trust and conservation groups, et cetera, that I'm going to be emailing it to. So, you know, even if you guys just sign on to mine, at least there'll be something initially, because as soon as I get that go ahead, I'm sending it. But I'm also happy to send that huge list that I have to Joseph or whomever, to just so that you guys are all aware of who I've reached out to. And if you want to send, you know, a separate letter, that can be done. But my goal is, you know, after this meeting, whether you guys decide to sign on to my letter or not, is I'm going to start getting that sent out and hopefully finding someone, some group interested in purchasing this. But that's just, yeah, I just wanted to jump in on there with some of my experiences and kind of share the information that I have if you guys want it regarding all those organizations. So yeah, I think that's all.
Okay, thanks, Tori. Mitra was up next.
Yeah, Anita, I know that you're our representative, I believe, back to the DAB. And they, I am certain that you and I are aligned, and probably most of the people in the group, but it's really disheartening to know how much effort, so much effort was spent to like create these sub areas, to build better representation, to encourage all this public involvement, because we're so underserved. And if we get all this public involvement, then we can get the things. And if we just get it a little bit better, then that, I mean, and then to know that like there's literally land available and there's not the resources and the representation is ineffectual. And is it moving the bar forward at all? I just am thinking, like, why were these efforts and these meetings and these public engagement happening, you know, for the last couple of years to create this additional system of representation that still can't buy 2.5 acres worth of park in our underserved area? You know, so I know that this is, I know that you don't disagree with me in any way, shape, or form. But please know that you can go back to those to whom you're speaking with and say, people, I am representing this, because you have the support.
Thanks, Mitra. I think Valerie was next and then Jane. So Valerie, you're up.
Okay, I just really wanted to quickly, there was a question about who a letter should go to. And it's very common for, if someone is sending out a letter and Tori is going to that effort and sending out a letter, we could send a letter of support for that property becoming purchased by a land trust that could go with Tori's letter. So it could just be an attachment that would go everywhere that she sent it. We could send it to other places if we wanted, but we could write a letter that would just be attached. So that would be my suggestion. I think that would be the easiest thing for it to get widely dispersed.
Okay, thank you. And Jane.
I wanted to also ask Chips or Tori if they would consider having this letter put in print in our local newspaper, perhaps in the Clackamas Review. And as far as Tori's motion is concerned, I have a result of I polled the electorate. First, I would like to clarify with Suzanne Wolf that she is a voting member. Suzanne, are you still here?
Yes, she is. She is now.
Yes. Okay, thank you. If that is the case, then we do have no nay votes on Tori's letter regarding the Whipple area development, and the vote is 11 yes, and 1 abstention.
Okay, great. So we are signing on to Tori's letter. So Tori, we will sign on to the letter that you already have. And then now we have a motion on the floor from Chips. And who seconded it? Did we record who seconded it? Just want to make sure we have everything straight.
It was Eleanor.
Okay, so Chips with
I
the
believe
motion,
it was
Eleanor was the
Eleanor.
second.
It was Eleanor, I believe.
Chips, are you okay with the suggestion from Valerie?
I am more than okay. I appreciate that, Valerie. Thank you. That's exactly where it should go.
Eleanor, are you okay with the amended motion?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so we're square on the amended motion. I would like to ask everyone to vote on that again to Jane. We've still got a few more minutes worth of business to conduct, and I'm going to try to get us through it, and we'll have results on that vote. Jane?
Yes, while I'm tallying that vote, I would like to also report the results of the election for secretary.
Oh, please.
Yes, our secretarial election was 0 no votes and 13 yes votes. We shall inform Danielle that she has been elected as the secretary. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so while you're voting in the chat on sending a paired letter, for Tori to send off with her letters to Land Trust, I'm going to share my screen again and talk a little bit about a couple other of our committees. And so we're moving on. Actually, Anito, is that out from Parks? Just to make sure I'm not leaving you early. Okay, very good. So here's an update from the Watershed Council. Bob Bohannon and myself are board members of the North Clackamas Watershed Council. So if you have any, need to contact them, you can reach out to us. So recently there was an oil spill that you might have heard of on the business on McLaughlin. There was a fire and it ruptured an oil drum and it spilled into a storm drain and flowed into Kellogg Creek and Kellogg Lake in Milwaukee. And let's see. Sorry about that. I was getting noise in my ear again. So this was on October 13th, so it was a couple of weeks ago. And, you know, yeah, like I said, it eventually washed down in the storm drain here, way up here on McLaughlin, almost at Courtney. And it flowed down through the system and into the creek and got stuck in the slow Kellogg Lake. It's backed up behind the dam. And so this is actually being cleaned up by DEQ. And I thought I had a slide in here for that. Here we go, DEQ and ODOT and Department of Fish and Wildlife are working to contain the spill and you know, rescue any impacted wildlife. So those would be the agencies to contact if you have any other information about this. The Watersheds Council just puts out, you know, their normal message of, you know, how do we keep this from happening? You know, we need to upgrade our stormwater systems. You know, generally have, you know, healthy habitat, you know, preserving trees and everything to, you know, help process, you know, stormwater and pollution, and then advocate for strong rules and that protect water quality and funding. And so that's the message from the Watersheds Council. If there's any other questions about this, feel free to reach out to me by email. I can connect you with Neil at the Watersheds Council. A quick update on the governance project's next meeting. Dr. David Lewis will be presenting to the public at the Oak Lodge Governance Project next month. And then I had a quick update from the Pedestrian Bikeway Advisory Committee. There's a grant-funded bicycle parking rack that's available for a business. So if anybody knows any businesses in the Oak Grove area, the county has a bicycle parking rack for about a dozen, I think, bicycles that takes up only the space of one car parking space. And this is grant funded, and so they're willing to bring it to you. But just reach out to contact@oakgrovecpo.org. Let us know if you know of a business that would be interested in that. Also, we've got the Bike Walk Clackamas plan coming up. That's been fully grant funded, and they'll be recruiting for an advisory committee on that project coming up soon. Also, we are asking if there are any sidewalk project requests in the area. And so if you have ideas for where sidewalks should go, reach out to me. And also we have a program that's being funded with the County Ped Bikeway Committee to identify chronically unsafe bike and pedestrian infrastructure. And this could be anything from storm drains in a bike lane that people catch tires on, to spaces where people chronically park in the bicycle lane and force people to walk or bike out into traffic. All of those kinds of things, really kind of low cost improvements. The county has some money for that. So let me know if you know of any dangerous hotspots for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure in the area. I'll relay those to the committee. Current recruitments for advisory boards and commissions, Clackamas Workforce Partnership, Community Health Council, Compensated Board for Elected Officials, County Fair Board, Development Disabilities Council. Lots of them are open right now. So we're going to send these out in an email, follow-up email to let you guys know. But the ones that are really coming up soon are the Economic Development Commission, closes on Friday, and the Vector Control District, County Fair Board, and Community Health Council are closing on Halloween, which is Sunday. So it's here's the web address, and we'll send that out in our follow-up email. Any announcements from the floor? Jane, your hand is still up. Is that from earlier? No. Okay, any announcements from the floor?
Well, I do have an announcement about the last election.
Oh, great, go for it.
We have yes, 11 votes, no, 0 votes. Motion passes.
Awesome, thanks everybody. So if we have no further announcements, Jenna, do you have an announcement?
I don't have an announcement, but I did just want to check in on business that I brought up at last meeting regarding the creek and the dead end that doesn't have any signage down by my property. It's getting into winter, and the creek with all the rains is starting to fill up, and with all the debris that's in there, it's getting to the point where it's at road level and about to overflow. And it's not even raining hard yet. You know, that and the safety concern where, you know, there's just no indication of where the road ends. And I constantly have vehicles coming down, especially large delivery vehicles, and turning around on my property, and they often back into the creek, which causes damage to the creek, as well as a lot of oil spillage.
Yes, we would probably want to contact county road maintenance about that.
And I've done that, and I have a lot of conversation back and forth in the email form, and they're not going to do anything about it. They said it's unmaintained right of way. So I've been dealing with this for almost 2 years now. And I've hit a dead end. I've found you guys. I'm asking for some support.
I will be happy to reach out to contacts that I have at transportation and see if there's something that they can direct us to, and I'll reach back out to you. I've got your email address. You know, you've contacted us before. So,
wonderful. And if someone would just
I'd be happy to take that on.
I appreciate that. And if someone was just willing to meet me on site and have a short conversation, I have some suggestions I don't think would cost very much to address, you know, some of these concerns.
Okay. Yeah, we can be in touch with you about that and see if there's some way that we can be helpful.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions or announcements from the floor? Okay, well, our next meeting will be December 1st, and our presentation will be from the Oak Lodge Water Services District as they let us know about their ongoing efforts to become an authority. So with that, I think we're going to wrap it up because we're so close to 9 o'clock. There's not really time left over for social hour, but I will ask Valerie to stop recording, and everybody have a great evening.